September 3rd, 1955. Robert's Temple Church, Chicago. A single funeral gathering. 500 men in attendance. Not one gunshot fired. Yet Bumpy Johnson stepped directly into territory governed entirely by fear. This wasn't an act of mourning or rebellion. This was calculated strategy. One individual confronted an entire racist criminal underworld and walked away breathing. So how exactly did he make it out alive when every sign pointed to his death? To grasp the meaning of that silence, we need to go back to where this truly started. August 1955. Chicago. The type of oppressive heat that doesn't merely rest on your flesh. It seeps beneath and settles deep in your chest. The South Side apartment is tight, confined, the sort of dwelling where every noise from the street rises through the walls as though the chaos is unfolding right beside you. Mamie Till-Mobley stands motionless in her kitchen, staring down at a black rotary telephone that weighs around 5 pounds but feels closer to 500. Her child is gone. Emmett Till, 14 years of age, sent south to Mississippi during the summer months to stay with relatives, to breathe some country air, to discover what it feels like to be young and carefree for a brief time before the school year resumed. He whistled at a white woman. Or perhaps he didn't. The account shifts depending on who's recounting it and how deeply they despise the color of his skin. What remains constant is this. 72 hours afterward, 2 men dragged him from his uncle's home in the dead of night, battered him until his features were beyond recognition, fired a bullet into his skull, wrapped barbed wire around his throat with a cotton gin fan secured to it, and discarded what remained of him into the Tallahatchie River. Authorities recovered the body 3 days afterward. Swollen, decayed, scarcely resembling anything human, they pushed to bury him right away. Seal the casket shut, erase it from memory. That's the protocol down south in 1955. You don't raise questions, you don't create disturbances, you allow the earth to consume the evidence and carry on as if nothing occurred, because legally speaking, nothing did occur as far as the authorities are concerned. But Mamie isn't moving forward. Mamie stands in her kitchen, clutching that telephone in her grip, and she's placing a call that most individuals wouldn't possess the courage to make because the person on the receiving end isn't an attorney or a minister or a civil rights advocate. He's something altogether different. Bumpy Johnson. Harlem, 50 years of age. A man who constructed an empire built on numbers, rackets, protection schemes, and the sort of strategic brutality that makes other men reconsider their choices in life. He's witnessed things that would turn most souls inside out. He's committed acts that don't get mentioned in respectable conversation, but he's also a father. And there exist boundaries even men like Bumpy refuse to cross, and one of those boundaries involves children. Mamie encountered Bumpy years back through common acquaintances in Chicago's Bronzeville during the time when Emmett was still small enough to perch on her knee and pose questions about why the world operates the way it does. Bumpy took a liking to the kid, considered him intelligent, believed he had potential ahead of him, and now that future lies wrapped in barbed wire at the bottom of a Mississippi river, and Mamie requires assistance from someone the system can't control because the system itself is the problem. She dials. The phone rings 3 times. A voice responds, low, measured. Bumpy speaking. It's Mamie. Silence on the opposite end. Not the variety of silence suggesting nobody's present. The kind indicating someone's listening with extreme care and determining how much they need to hear before taking action. They murdered my boy? Another stretch of silence, longer this instance. Then Bumpy's voice, quieter than moments before. Colder, I heard. I'm bringing him home. I'm opening that coffin. I'm going to reveal to the world what they did. You understand what that means, Mamie. You understand what happens when you make that kind of noise. I understand. That's precisely why I'm calling you. She isn't requesting revenge, not asking Bumpy to travel down to Mississippi and settle accounts with the men who murdered her child. She's requesting something more difficult. She's asking to be protected while she speaks the truth. Because in America, 1955, speaking the truth about what white men do to black children carries more danger than drawing a weapon in a crowded space. Bumpy sits in his Harlem office. A glass of something costly rests on the desk before him. Duke Ellington plays softly on a record player positioned in the corner. He closes his eyes, visualizes Emmett's face the way it used to appear, vibrant, inquisitive, alive. Then he pictures what it must look like presently, and his jaw clenches until the muscle twitches beneath the skin. When's the funeral? September 3rd. Robert's Temple, Church of God in Christ. I'll be there. Bumpy, they're going to come after me. After anyone who stands alongside me. Let them attempt it. Mamie exhales. It isn't relief. Relief is for individuals who believe the world operates fairly. This is simply the sound of someone who knows they're about to walk straight into hell. And at minimum, they won't be walking alone. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is going to turn ugly, Mamie. Uglier than anything you've witnessed. You ready for that? I've already buried my son once. How much worse could it possibly get? Bumpy doesn't answer that question because they both already know the answer. It can always deteriorate further. The question is whether you allow that to stop you. She disconnects the call, remains standing in her kitchen with the heat bearing down and the street noise creeping through the walls, and she reaches a decision that will alter everything. She's going to open that coffin. She's going to allow the world to witness what hatred looks like when it gets its hands on a child. And if the world wants to look away, if the world wants to pretend it never happened, Bumpy Johnson is going to make absolutely certain they cannot. When a mother chooses truth, the world must choose a side. And in 5 days at a church on Chicago's South Side, everyone is going to discover which side they're on. 5 days before the funeral, Mamie Till-Mobley exists in a world that wants her deceased or silent. And in 1955 Mississippi, those two outcomes are frequently identical. The telephone rings at 3 in the morning. A voice on the opposite end, slow and southern, dripping with the variety of hatred that doesn't require raised volume. You bring that boy back here, we'll finish what we started. You understand me, woman? We'll burn that church to the ground with you inside it. Mamie hangs up. Her hands tremble. Not from fear. From rage that has nowhere to direct itself except inward, consuming her alive 1 minute at a time. She contacts the Chicago police. They dispatch an officer who writes nothing, nods frequently, and departs after 10 minutes with a promise to investigate that both of them recognize as a lie. Down in Mississippi, Sheriff Strider sits in a diner with Roy Bryant and J.W. Milam, the two men who beat Emmett Till's face into pulp, placed a bullet through his skull, and dumped him in the river like refuse. They're eating eggs, drinking coffee, laughing about some joke somebody told. The sheriff knows what they did. Hell, half the county knows what they did. Nobody cares. That's how it functions. You kill a black kid, you receive breakfast and a handshake. Mamie isn't foolish. She knows opening that coffin constitutes a declaration of war. She knows the people who killed her son won't stop at one body if they believe they can manage two. She needs protection. And the kind she requires doesn't arrive with a badge or a law degree. It arrives with scars and a willingness to commit acts that keep you awake at night if you still possess a conscience. Bumpy Johnson sits in his Harlem office, a space thick with cigar smoke and the faint aroma of expensive liquor from a bottle of Bordeaux 1934. He keeps around for evenings when negotiations require lubrication. Duke Ellington plays low on the record player, something smooth that makes you forget the world is filled with animals pretending to be men. But Bumpy isn't forgetting. Bumpy is planning. He lights a cigarette, reclines in his chair, thinks about Emmett's face before Mississippi got hold of him. Bright and full of the variety of hope that gets beaten from black boys before they reach 15. Then he thinks about what that face looks like now, and his jaw locks so tight it aches. This isn't about emotion. Emotion gets people killed. This is about cold strategy, the kind you execute in 4 steps with zero room for improvisation. Because improvisation is how you end up in a shallow grave with nobody asking questions. Step 1. Identify every son of a bitch who might attempt something. White Citizens Council, Klan chapters in Chicago and Indiana, local thugs seeking to make a reputation, cops who might glance the other way while someone tosses a Molotov cocktail through Mamie's window. He creates a list in his mind. Names, addresses, vulnerabilities, because if you know where a man sleeps, you know how to ensure he stops sleeping permanently. Step 2. Construct a wall around Mamie. Nothing penetrates. She requires people surrounding her every second from this moment until the funeral concludes, and she's back home behind locked doors. Not rent-a-cops. Killers. Men who have placed bodies in the ground and didn't lose sleep afterward. Men who will snap fingers, fracture ribs, and open throats if someone so much as glances at Mamie the wrong way. Step 3. Arrive in Chicago with sufficient firepower that the opposition does the calculations and walks away. Not 100 men, that's a parade. 20, perhaps 30, all of them with reputations. All of them prepared not to initiate something, to finish it if someone else is foolish enough to start it first. The objective isn't a shootout. The objective is to make a shootout so unappealing that nobody even considers reaching for their waistband. Step 4. Disappear when it's done. No press, no credit, no speeches about justice and equality. This isn't about Bumpy. This is about ensuring Mamie can stand before that open coffin and reveal to the world what hatred looks like when it gets its hands on a child. Bumpy is the shadow that keeps the wolves at bay, nothing more. He picks up the phone, begins dialing. The first call goes to Chicago. A man named Clarence answers on the second ring. It's Bumpy. What do you need? Bodies. September 3rd. Roberts Temple Church. Protection detail. Who are we protecting? Mamie Till. You heard what happened to her boy. Silence on the opposite end. Then Clarence's voice, lower now. Colder. I heard. Those bastards down in Mississippi. Yeah? And they're not finished. Word is they're going to attempt something at the funeral. Ensure she doesn't get to speak. Ensure the story dies quietly. Screw that. What do you need me to do? Round up 10 men. Reliable. Not hotheads, not kids. Men who understand how to stand in a room full of hatred and not blink. We're not initiating a war. We're ensuring one doesn't start. What if someone attempts it anyway? Bumpy takes a long drag on his cigarette, allows the smoke to fill his lungs, exhales slowly, then you break their legs and ensure they remember why they should have stayed home. Got it. Click. Next call. Detroit. A man named Thomas. Bumpy. Been a while. I need a favor. Name it. Chicago. September 3rd. Bring 4 men, armed. We're keeping a mother safe while she buries her son. The Till kid. Yeah. Thomas doesn't request details. Doesn't require them. Anyone gives you trouble? You want them breathing or not breathing when it's over? Breathing unless they pull first. Then do what you have to do. Understood. Click. Philadelphia, Bronzeville, Cleveland. 17 calls. Same message, same cold efficiency. By 2 in the morning, the network is active. Word spreads through the underworld like fire through dry grass. Bumpy Johnson is moving. Bumpy Johnson is protecting Mamie Till. And if you value your ability to walk without a cane and eat without a straw, you stay the hell away from Roberts Temple Church on September 3rd. The final call is to a man in Chicago who operates a car service. Bumpy doesn't introduce himself. Doesn't need to. I need 3 cars. Clean. No plates that trace back to anyone. September 3rd, 8 in the morning. Parked outside Mamie Till's building. Drivers stay with the cars. Engines running. If we need to move fast, I don't want to wait for someone to locate their keys. You expecting trouble? I'm expecting someone to think about causing trouble and then remember they like their kneecaps intact. The man laughs nervously. Consider it done. Bumpy hangs up, pours himself 2 fingers of whiskey, doesn't drink it yet, just holds the glass and watches the amber liquid catch the light from the desk lamp. He thinks about the men who killed Emmett. Thinks about how simple it would be to board a train to Mississippi, locate them, and ensure they never harm another child. 2 bullets, perhaps 3 if one of them runs. Problem solved. Justice delivered. But that's not what Mamie requested. Mamie requested protection. Mamie requested the opportunity to tell the truth without getting killed for it. And Bumpy is many things, but he's not a man who ignores what a grieving mother asks for. He drinks the whiskey, sets the glass down hard enough that it cracks. The countdown has commenced. 5 days until the funeral. 5 days to ensure the world witnesses what America does to black children when nobody is watching. 5 days to stand between a mother and the men who want her silenced. And if anyone is foolish enough to test him, if anyone decides that threatening a woman at her son's funeral is a sound idea, they're going to learn a lesson that will cost them bones, teeth, and possibly their life. The phone rings one final time. Bumpy picks it up. Johnson, a voice he doesn't recognize, southern accent, thick, confident. You stay out of Chicago, boy. This doesn't concern you. Bumpy smiles. It's not a friendly smile. It's the kind of smile a wolf gives a rabbit right before teeth meet throat. I'll see you at the church. Bring friends. You're going to need them. He hangs up, lights another cigarette, and starts creating a list of things he's going to require. Not guns, he has guns. Not men, he has men. What he requires is a message so clear that even the dumbest racist bastard in America understands it without needing a translator. Touch Mamie Till and you won't live long enough to regret it. 72 hours until the funeral. Mamie Till-Mobley wakes to discover a car parked across the street from her apartment that wasn't there when she went to bed. Black Chevrolet. 2 men inside. They don't move, don't speak. Just sit there smoking cigarettes and watching her windows like vultures waiting for something to finish dying. She calls the police. The dispatcher sounds bored. Ma'am, it's not illegal to park on a public street. They've been there for 6 hours. Have they threatened you? No, but they're staring at my building. Then there's nothing we can do. Call back if they actually do something. Click, dial tone. The system functions exactly the way it was designed to function, which is to say not at all if you're black and the people threatening you are white. Mamie stands at her window with the curtains pulled just enough to see outward without being seen. The men in the car don't leave. At noon, a different car replaces them. Same setup. 2 men, cigarettes, dead eyes. The message is clear without needing to be spoken. We know where you live. We know you're alone. And when we decide it's time, there's nothing you can do to stop us. She doesn't sleep that night. Sits in her kitchen with the lights off and a knife from the drawer on the table before her, because it's the only weapon she possesses and she knows it won't be enough if they come through the door. But holding it makes her feel slightly less helpless. And helpless is a feeling she cannot afford right now. At Robert's Temple Church, the Reverend walks through the empty sanctuary and feels something in the atmosphere that wasn't there yesterday. The pews are clean. The floors are polished. Everything is prepared for the funeral. But the space feels wrong, cold. Like the building knows something terrible is about to occur and is attempting to warn him. He locks the doors, checks the windows, prays that September 3rd arrives and departs without violence. But he's been a pastor in Chicago long enough to know that prayers don't stop men with gasoline and matches. And there are people out there who would burn this church to the ground simply to prove they can. August 31st, 1955. Night, Penn Station, New York. Bumpy Johnson boards the overnight train to Chicago with 20 men who appear as though they're attending a business meeting, except the business they're in involves breaking limbs and making people disappear. They don't talk much, don't draw attention. Just settle into their seats with newspapers and cigarettes and the kind of patience that comes from years of waiting for violence to arrive so you can meet it head on. The train pulls from the station. The wheels grind against the rails, metal on metal, a rhythm that sounds like a countdown. Bumpy sits by the window, watching the city disappear into darkness. Beside him, a man named Clarence leans over, voice low. You think they're going to try something at the church? I know they're going to try something. The question is whether they're smart enough to back down when they see us. And if they're not smart, Bumpy doesn't answer right away. Just watches the landscape blur past. Farmland and small towns and the vast empty nothing between cities where people commit terrible acts because there's nobody around to stop them. Then he turns to Clarence and his eyes are flat and cold. Then we're going to teach them a lesson they'll remember for the rest of their lives, however long that turns out to be. Clarence nods, lights a cigarette. The smoke curls upward toward the ceiling of the train car, and in the reflection of the window, you can see the faces of 20 men who have all killed before and will kill again if necessary. Not because they want to, but because the world they inhabit doesn't offer better options. September 1st, 1955, 48 hours until the funeral. Word spreads through the underworld like a virus. Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Philadelphia. Conversations in back rooms and basement bars where men drink whiskey that never saw a tax stamp and discuss business that would get them 20 years in federal prison if anyone was listening. You heard about Bumpy? What about him? He's going to Chicago. Emmett Till's funeral. The kid from Mississippi. Yeah. Bumpy's bringing muscle. A lot of muscle. The man takes a long drink, sets his glass down hard. Why the hell would Bumpy get involved in that? That's civil rights business, not his fight. Maybe it's not about rights. Maybe it's about a 14-year-old kid getting his face beat in and dumped in a river, and Bumpy decides somebody needs to stand up before it happens again. Bumpy doesn't do charity work. Bumpy doesn't let children get murdered without consequences. There's a difference. The room goes quiet. Men drink, men think, and every single one of them arrives at the same conclusion. If Bumpy Johnson is in Chicago protecting Mamie Till, you don't go anywhere near that church unless you want to discover what it feels like to have your jaw wired shut for 6 months. In a house on the south side of Chicago, a man named Vernon sits with 3 others around a kitchen table covered in beer bottles and bad ideas. Vernon is Klan adjacent, which means he's not official, but he shares the ideology and the hatred and the willingness to hurt people who don't look like him. I say, we hit the church the night before. Burn it down. No church, no funeral. Problem solved. One of the other men shakes his head. You're out of your goddamn mind. You know who's protecting her? Some old gangster from Harlem. So what? So Bumpy Johnson is not some old anything. Bumpy Johnson is the kind of man who will cut your throat, dump you in Lake Michigan, and sleep like a baby that night. You go after that church. You're signing your own death warrant. Vernon slams his fist on the table. We can't just let her parade that boy's body around like some kind of martyr. It's disrespectful. Disrespectful to who? The men who killed him. Screw them. And screw you if you think burning a church is a good idea. I'm not dying because you have a hard-on for starting a race war. The meeting ends with nothing decided and everyone on edge. Vernon leaves angry. The others leave relieved. They talked him out of something stupid. But in the world of men like Vernon, being talked out of something is not the same as abandoning the idea. It just means waiting for a better opportunity. September 2nd, 1955, 24 hours until the funeral. Bumpy's train pulls into Union Station in Chicago at 6 in the morning. The platform is half empty. A few businessmen, a couple of families. Nobody pays attention to the 20 men in dark suits who step off the train and move through the station like smoke. Quiet and deliberate, spreading out into cars that are waiting with engines running. Bumpy doesn't go to Mamie's apartment. Not yet. He goes to a building in Bronzeville where men he trusts are waiting with information, maps of the neighborhood, names of local troublemakers, police patrol schedules, exit routes in case things go bad and they need to move fast. A man named Thomas spreads a map on the table, points to the church. This is the target. 3 entrances, front doors, side door, back exit through the basement. We cover all 3. Nobody gets in unless we know who they are and why they're there. Bumpy studies the map. What about the rooftops? Already handled. We have 2 men in the building across the street. If someone tries to take a shot from above, they won't get a second chance. Good. What about fires? Molotov cocktails? Some dumb bastard with gasoline and a book of matches? Thomas nods. We have people walking the perimeter all night. Anything that looks wrong, we handle it before it becomes a problem. Bumpy leans back, lights a cigarette. And if someone does try something during the service, if they rush the doors or start shooting, Thomas doesn't hesitate. We put them down, hard, fast, permanently, if necessary. Bumpy exhales smoke, nods once. Make sure the boys understand. We're not here to start trouble. We're here to stop it. But if it starts anyway, we finish it so thoroughly that nobody else gets any ideas. By noon, the word is everywhere. Every bar, every street corner, every back room in Chicago where men gather to discuss things they shouldn't discuss. Bumpy Johnson is in town. Where? Bronzeville. Brought 20 men, maybe more, all of them armed. What's he doing? Protecting Mamie Till. You go near that church tomorrow, you're a dead man. The smart ones stay home. The dumb ones think about going anyway. And the really dumb ones start loading guns and making plans they'll never get to execute because Bumpy Johnson has spent the last 72 hours building a wall around that church that nothing is getting through. 24 hours until the funeral. The countdown is almost over, and everyone in Chicago, black and white, criminal and cop, understands that tomorrow is going to be the day the world changes, whether it wants to or not. Robert's Temple Church of God in Christ. The line starts at dawn and stretches 3 blocks. Thousands of people waiting to witness what 2 men in Mississippi did to a 14-year-old boy with their fists, a gun, and a river that doesn't give back what it swallows. The coffin sits open, glass-topped. Mamie insisted. She wants the world to see. Emmett lies inside wearing a suit that doesn't fit because his body is so broken and swollen that nothing fits anymore. Face caved in, eye socket crushed, jaw hanging wrong, bullet hole above the ear dark and final, barbed wire scars around the neck where they tied him to 70 pounds of metal and threw him in like garbage. People file past. Women cry. Men look away and then force themselves to look back. Some kid whispers to his mother, "Why does he look like that?" And she doesn't answer. Because there's no answer that makes sense to a child. This is what hate looks like when it gets its hands on you and doesn't stop until you're unrecognizable. Outside, Bumpy Johnson steps from a black Cadillac. 2 cars behind him, engines running, men inside with hands near waistbands. He walks to the entrance, black suit, black tie, fedora low, silent. 2 of his men stand at the doors. One of them nods. Has anyone tried anything yet? A truck drove by twice. 3 white boys. One had a gun. Saw us and kept driving. Good. They come back. You break their arms before they get within 50 feet of this building. What if they're cops? Bumpy's jaw tightens. Then you break their arms and I'll deal with the paperwork. Inside, the church is packed. Every pew is full. People standing. Cameras ready. Bumpy moves to the back corner where he can see everything. Marcus is at the side door. Thomas at the rear. Clarence on the roof across the street with a rifle and instructions that are very simple. Anyone points a gun at this church, you put a bullet through their skull before they pull the trigger. At 10:30, Mamie walks to the pulpit. Small, shaking, black dress. The reverend helps her up. She grips the microphone. The room goes dead silent. They told me to close the coffin. Said it was too much. Said people shouldn't see. Her voice cracks. She pauses, breathes, continues. But I want the world to see what they did to my baby. I want everyone to know. A woman in the 3rd row sobs. A man in the back punches the wall hard enough that his knuckles split. Nobody moves. Nobody speaks. They just listen as Mamie tells them about Emmett before Mississippi got its hands on him, about his laugh, about his dreams, about the future he'll never have because 2 men decided he was less than human. Outside, the pickup truck comes back. 3rd time, slows down near the church entrance. The driver leans out, sees Bumpy's men at every door, sees the way they're standing, the way their hands are positioned, the way their eyes track the truck like wolves watching prey. The passenger says something. The driver shakes his head. They argue. Low voices, tense. One of Bumpy's men, a guy named Raymond, walks toward the truck. Slow, deliberate, gets within 10 feet, stops, stares at the driver, says nothing, just stares. The driver sees Raymond's eyes, flat, empty, the kind of eyes that have seen men beg for their lives and were not moved by it. The driver hits the gas. The truck speeds away, tires squealing. Raymond walks back to his position, lights a cigarette, calls over his shoulder to the man at the door. They won't be back. How do you know? Because that driver just learned what fear tastes like. Inside, the service continues. Hymns, prayers, flashbulbs popping as photographers capture images that will appear in Jet magazine and newspapers, in living rooms across America where white families will see them over breakfast and suddenly lose their appetite. At 11:45, a man in the crowd stands up. White, 50s, suit and tie. Looks like a businessman, but his eyes are wrong. Too hard, too angry. He starts walking toward the coffin. Fast. Purpose in his stride. Marcus sees him, moves, intercepts him 3 rows from the front. Doesn't grab him, just steps in front of him. Close. Blocking. Sit down. I have every right to be here. I didn't say you didn't have a right. I said sit down. The man's hand moves toward his jacket. Marcus's hand moves faster, grabs the wrist, twists it behind the man's back hard enough that something pops. The man gasps, tries to pull away, cannot. Marcus leans in, whispers directly into his ear. You have 2 choices. You walk out of here right now with a sprained wrist and a story about how you almost did something stupid, or you keep fighting and I break every finger on this hand one at a time until you pass out from the pain. Choose fast. The man goes limp, nods. Marcus releases him. The man stumbles toward the exit, holding his wrist, face white. Mamie doesn't see any of it. She's at the coffin now, touching the glass, saying goodbye to her son in a whisper nobody else hears. The Reverend stands beside her, gives her as much time as she needs. At noon, the service ends. Pallbearers move forward. The coffin is closed. Mamie follows it down the aisle, walking like every step costs her something she'll never get back. The crowd files out, slow, silent, changed. Outside, a young reporter approaches Bumpy. Nervous, white, holding a notepad. "Excuse me, sir. I'm with the Tribune. Can I ask why you're here?" Bumpy looks at him long enough that the reporter's hand starts to shake. "You see that woman?" Bumpy nods toward Mamie getting into a car. She lost her son. She wanted to bury him and tell the truth. Some people didn't want her to do that. I'm here to make sure she gets to. Are you expecting trouble? I was expecting trouble, but the trouble took one look at us and decided it had somewhere else to be. Who are you? Bumpy steps closer. The reporter backs up. Bumpy keeps his voice low, cold, the kind of cold that comes from a place where mercy died a long time ago. I'm the man standing between a grieving mother and the bastards who think they can hurt her for telling the truth. You print that if you want, but if you print my name, if you make this about me instead of her, I'll find you and we'll have a conversation about respect that you won't enjoy. Are we clear? The reporter nods, backs away, doesn't write anything down. Bumpy watches the cars pull away. Mamie in the lead, surrounded, protected, alive. The funeral is over. The coffin is closed. The photographs are taken. And justice might lose in a Mississippi courtroom where the jury is all white and the verdict is already written. But truth just won in this church. Truth is in those pictures. Truth is in the faces of the people who saw that open coffin and understood that this is not a Mississippi problem, this is an America problem. And now that truth is loose, it's going to spread like fire through dry timber, burning down the lies people tell themselves about how things are supposed to be. Bumpy lights a cigarette, watches the crowd disperse. Marcus walks over. Are we done here? Not yet. Mamie still has to make it home. And then there's a trial coming. Mississippi. Couple weeks. Are you going to that too? Bumpy exhales smoke, stares at the horizon where the sky meets the city and everything looks almost peaceful if you don't know better. Yeah, I'm going to that too. because those men who killed Emmett are going to walk free. And when they do, Mamie is going to need someone standing between her and the people who think that verdict gives them permission to finish what they started. Marcus nods. They walk back to the cars, engines still running, men still watching. The funeral is over, but the war is just beginning. And Bumpy Johnson just made it clear to everyone in America that some battles are worth fighting even when you know you're going to lose in court, because winning in court is not the only kind of victory that matters. September 19th, 1955, Sumner, Mississippi, Tallahatchie County Courthouse. The jury is 12 white men who decided the verdict before the trial started. Roy Bryant and J.W. Milam sit at the defense table in clean shirts, looking like respectable citizens instead of the men who beat a child to death and dumped him in a river. Mamie sits in the back, the only section where black people are allowed. She watches the men who killed her son smile and smoke cigars while the judge pretends not to notice. Outside, Bumpy Johnson stands with Marcus and 20 men, not here to storm the building, here to make sure Mamie walks in alive and walks out the same way. Marcus nods towards 6 men by a pickup truck. They've been watching since 8 this morning. Waiting. Let them watch. Let them see us. Let them do the math and realize touching her means going through us first. Inside, the trial is a performance. Witnesses testify. The defense lawyer smiles and tears them apart. The jury sits with blank faces, already knowing what they'll say. September 23rd, 1955. The jury deliberates for 67 minutes. They come back. We find the defendants not guilty. The courtroom explodes. White spectators cheer. Bryant and Milam shake hands, grinning. Mamie sits frozen. Tears run down her face, but she makes no sound. Just absorbs the weight of a system that looked at her murdered son and decided his life was worth nothing. Bumpy sits 3 rows back, hands gripping the bench so hard the wood cracks, jaw locked, eyes flat. Marcus leans over. Say the word. We can take them both right now. No, Mamie didn't ask me to kill them. She asked me to keep her safe. That's what we do. Outside, the crowd has grown. 200 people, some celebrating, some furious. Bumpy's men form a corridor from the courthouse to the cars. Mamie walks through it, head high, refusing to break. A man yells, "Go home. You lost." Mamie doesn't flinch, keeps walking. Marcus stops. Bumpy grabs his arm. Not now. They reach the cars. Mamie gets in. The door closes. The convoy pulls away. Bumpy looks back one last time at the men still cheering, still celebrating. They think they won. They're wrong, because justice might have died in that courtroom, but truth just walked out alive. And history will remember which one mattered more. The trial is over. Bryant and Milam walk free. The system that was supposed to deliver justice delivered a middle finger instead. Emmett Till is still dead. His killers are still breathing. And for most of America, that would be the end of the story. Close the book, move on, forget. But forgetting is not an option anymore. The photographs from that open coffin travel. They appear in Jet magazine. They spread to newspapers across the country. They show up in barbershops and churches and living rooms where white families see them over breakfast and suddenly cannot finish their eggs. The images are brutal, unforgiving. They force America to look at what it has been pretending not to see for 100 years. Mamie Till-Mobley does not stop. She travels, she speaks, she shows those photographs to anyone who will look. She becomes the voice that will not be silenced. The mother who turned her grief into a weapon that no courtroom can dismiss and no jury can ignore. Within a year, her son's murder becomes the spark that ignites the civil rights movement. Rosa Parks will say later that she thought about Emmett Till when she refused to give up her seat on that bus in Montgomery. Martin Luther King will reference him in speeches. The boy from Chicago becomes a symbol that changes a nation. Bumpy Johnson does none of this. He doesn't give interviews, he doesn't take credit, he doesn't stand beside Mamie at rallies or appear in photographs with civil rights leaders. He goes back to Harlem, back to his office with the record player and the expensive liquor and the business that doesn't care about justice or morality, only survival. Marcus asks him one night over drinks why he did it. Why he spent weeks protecting a woman he barely knew for a cause that will never put money in his pocket or expand his territory. Bumpy swirls his whiskey, stares at the amber liquid like it holds answers. You ever have trouble sleeping, Marcus? Sometimes. I sleep fine every night. You know why? Why? Because when I close my eyes, I don't see the faces of people I should have protected and didn't. I see the ones I did protect, the ones who are still breathing because I was there when nobody else would be. That's worth more than money. That's worth more than power. Marcus nods. Doesn't ask anything else. The history books will not mention Bumpy Johnson when they talk about Emmett Till. They will not write about the men who stood outside that church in Chicago, or the corridor they formed in Mississippi, or the 20 rifles pointed at anyone who thought about turning a funeral into a massacre. History does not record the names of men who operate in shadows. It records the names of the people they protect. And that's fine. Bumpy doesn't need his name in a textbook. He needs to sleep at night, and he does. Because when Mamie Till-Mobley needed someone to stand between her and the men who wanted her dead for telling the truth, he was there. Not for glory, not for recognition, because it was the right thing to do. And in a world full of men who do the wrong thing every single day without consequence, sometimes doing the right thing is the only power that matters. Years later, Bryant and Milam will give an interview to Look magazine. They will admit they killed Emmett Till. They will laugh about it. They will get paid $4,000 for the story. Because in America, you can murder a child and profit from it as long as you wait until the statute of limitations runs out. When Bumpy hears about that interview, he doesn't rage, he doesn't threaten, he just sits in his office, lights a cigarette, and thinks about how some men get what they deserve in courtrooms, and some men get what they deserve in other ways. In alleys or back rooms or quiet moments when nobody is watching and the world suddenly balances itself. But that's not his story to write. His story ended the day Mamie walked out of that Mississippi courthouse, alive, head high, protected by men the system will never acknowledge but history desperately needed. Real power is not about who you dominate. It's about who you protect when nobody else has the courage to stand up. And on September 3rd, 1955, in a church on the south side of Chicago, Bumpy Johnson proved that some things are worth more than territory, more than money, more than fear. He proved that truth, when protected by men willing to die for it, can survive anything. Even Mississippi, even 1955, even America. This story is shared for historical insight and personal reflection, not to promote violence or illegal behavior. Thank you for watching until the end. These stories take weeks of research and writing to create. If this resonated with you, if you see the lesson Bumpy Johnson was teaching about accountability and education over violence, hit that subscribe button. Help us reach 1 million subscribers so we can keep telling stories that matter. Stories about power used wisely. Stories about consequences faced honestly. Stories about men who chose to change systems instead of just destroying enemies. Next video drops soon. Until then, remember, real power is not what you can destroy, it is what you choose to protect.